I'd like to call to order the meeting for Bedford Township, January 2nd, 2018. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, if Pastor Bob Hines could come up and open us up in prayer. He's from Bedford Alliance Church.
Let's pray together. Lord Jesus, we just want to thank you for living in a community that begins a meeting by seeking you first. Thank you for these men and women that you have placed in leadership. And God, I pray that you give them great wisdom and discernment. I pray that this would be a pivotal year for this group of leaders. God, we recognize that any organization rises and falls on the shoulders of leadership. And so, God, I pray that you give them great wisdom, great discernment, but most of all, God, that you would help them to work together, that you'd be unified, they could be a force to be reckoned with, that other communities would look at Bedford Township and say, we want leadership like what they have. So, God, I lift these men and women up to you now. I pray that you bless them, you encourage them, and most of all, you unify them in their decision-making. And I ask it in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you much for being here. Okay, item number 2, approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Support. Motion supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry? Aye. Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 3, consent agenda. The agenda committee reports. A, the committee recommends to the full board to approve and place on file the minutes of the December 19, 2017 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
Motion supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry? Aye. Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion's passed 7-0. Item 4, there's no presentations. 5, public comment. Comments limited to 2 minutes for board agenda items only. There's a sign-in sheet up here. If you could please sign in before you give your public comment, I'd appreciate it. And if anybody else has any comments and you want to sign in right now, you can do that to save a little time.
Good evening, Logan Tisdale, 1308 Brandywine Street. This is in regards to Section 8D, new business. We don't have to worry about the North Koreans sending missiles against us. Rather, all they have to do is wait 20 years and this country will die of cancer. We have called evil, and evil good for so long that we have failed to see its effects on our society, and we can't tell the difference anymore between what is good and what is evil. Humanism says, I'm okay, you're okay, but this is not the truth. I have never had an encounter with a druggie or drunk in my 23 years as a police officer that ever was a pleasant experience. It started in the late 1960s and has progressed to this horrible state whereby we want to legalize marijuana. 3 states have already done this to my knowledge, and my guess is other liberal-minded states will follow. Where does it end? People want to smoke or drown away their troubles, but cannabis, sativa, alcohol, and prescription drugs is not the answer. Christ the Savior is the only answer to their problems, not drugs. He came to set us free from the bondage of sin. Who will pay if we make the wrong decision in this matter? Our children and their children. You think it will stop with marijuana? Next, cocaine and opium. America the Beautiful will become America the Stoned. Maybe we're already there. Maybe we already know that it's going to happen. The bottom line is we can't allow this to happen in this community. We have to stand up against legalizing marijuana in this community. It's going to affect every fabric of our society. It's going to affect us on our highways. It's going to affect our kids, and no one's going to be able to control it. These people that are going to be giving this stuff out have no education. They're not pharmacists. They don't go to school. How are we going to control this? I don't want to be in a community where this takes place. I wouldn't live in Colorado. I wouldn't live in California. I'm not going to live in Washington. And I hope that Michigan is smart enough not to allow this to happen in our community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. Tim Janney, 3818 Conceal Road. At the last meeting, there was discussion of changing the sewer bills from quarterly to monthly, which would require, or was asked, a need for a part-time person. And the expense of, I think the number was $36,000 a year to the township. And the pastor prayed tonight for wisdom for this board. And I think there's no wisdom there to make such a change. There's no need for such a change. There's no need for spending that kind of money. It's taxpayer money. It's just, I don't understand it. I don't even understand it being brought up. But I don't think it's wise, and I don't think it's a republic. This is a Republican board. It's not conservative. I don't understand. I just don't. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Seeing none. Staff reports. Item 6A, request for approval for a 6-to-1 depth to width ratio waiver per the Land Division Ordinance, number 84, section 301.000 parcel number 5802-006-026-50. Lamar, do you want to take this one on? I don't know if Mr. Keene is here.
I can read through the document just about like everybody else. That the answer essentially is it's another one of these greater than 4-to-1, which is the statute. There have been some approvals and variances granted by the Bedford Township Board of Zoning Appeals. And so it's before us tonight to grant a waiver of the 6-to-1 depth to ratio in order for this land division to proceed. So therefore, Mr. Chairman, I move that the request for approval of a 6-to-1 depth ratio, depth to width ratio per land division ordinance section 84, section 301000, parcel number 5802-0602650 be granted.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and then seconded by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion's passed 7-0. Item 6B, request for approval for the installation of remote reset testing stations for the duct smoke detectors at the Bedford Township Library. Mr. Francis, did you want to take these, or did you want me to?
I will if you want. I think it's been recommended by our fire chief to install these remote detection devices in the library. He's recommended, there's a copy of the quotation that's in the packet from Asset Protection Corporation in Toledo, Ohio, for 2 of these units for a total of $1,700. And based on the chief's recommendation for this safety item, I move that we approve the installation as presented.
We have a motion on the floor.
I'll support.
Motion supported by Mr. Clements. Discussion? I just want to say, with these smoke detectors, or with these detectors, basically what it is, nobody has to get on a ladder anymore to go up to the ceiling of the library. You basically have a switch on the wall, so it's a safety issue. So I think that was one of the main reasons why they wanted to go this route. Ms. Tinneberry?
So you're saying that if there's a fire in the heating ducts, is that what this is about? I mean,
You have to inspect them every year.
our fire inspector has to go
Has to
inspect
go
them?
and inspect them.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
this would require him to basically go up to the ductwork in the ceiling,
Okay,
so
so with this, he can,
with this, he can do it from the floor and detect him with a switch.
what is he detecting, though? That's my question. I mean, is it
Smoke.
to see if there's smoke?
Oh,
The fire chief had a fire, he was supposed to be here to present him, but that's the understanding I got from it.
does it go off when there's, like our home detectors go off and make an alarm? Okay, well, the chief, I'll talk to him about it. I'm all for it, I just didn't know what it was.
The mainly thing is it's a safety deal, so that people aren't having to go up to the ceiling on ladders and
Gotcha.
to actually inspect it. So I don't know a ton about it, I just know that's kind of how they explained it to me, and I thought it'd be a good idea, so. Any more discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion is passed 7-0. Item 6C, request for approval from Chief Massengill to attend the 2018 Fire Staff and Command Program.
Apparently, this is quite an honor for him to be selected. There were, 1,000 people that applied, and they selected 50, and he made the grade. It's, as I recall from reading this, it's a 10-month program?
Yes.
It's a total tuition cost of $3,000, of which 75% or $2,250 would be reimbursed by Michigan Municipal Risk Management, an insurance company. So our net cost would be $750 for our chief to go to this series of classes. And you can see the dates on the second page of those classes. In the 10 weeks it's listed. I feel it's something that'd be very valuable to us in enhancing his knowledge and ability to serve the residents, so I move that we approve his time off to go to this series of courses.
Motion supported, or do you have a question?
I talked to him about the fact that he's going to be gone for a whole week. Who's in charge? Has he made sure that there's somebody in charge while he's gone? Who's going to be responsible? He tells me it's already been worked out with the various captains and lieutenants, so the fire station will be adequately staffed with management, so everything will be taken care of in terms of assuring that there's someone responsible at the fire stations at all times. That was my main concern. If you're gone.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Looking for a second. I support.
Motion supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. 7, old business. A, discussion of previous request for approval to change seasonal support staff position to part-time support staff position. Mr. Francis?
That item was brought up at the previous board meeting, and the discussion was to change the title only, nothing more. Well, it kind of morphed into a discussion of, do we want to go monthly or not? I've requested some information on the costs of changing to monthly billing and the costs that would be, in effect, forced on us by not going to monthly billing, because there is going to be a cost. And we've asked for information from South County Water and our software people, BSNA, for what those costs would be. I've heard back from none of them yet. I'm not real sure that South County Water has even thought of some of the questions that we've asked. A big one is the cost of reading the meters. They bill us to read the meters now quarterly. They're going to be doing it monthly now. And their cost, I want to know what that's going to be. Is it the same as the quarterly cost, only 12 times? I don't know. They don't know either at this point. So I guess I'd move that we table this again until that information is provided so we can make a legitimate decision. Do we want to or don't we want to? I've heard some comments tonight and earlier that it's a bad idea because it costs money. Well, let's look at the total picture. What are the costs to stay like we are quarterly? This isn't something that we sought to do. This is something that's being done by South County Water, which affects us because our computer systems do coordinate with each other. They send us the meter, or the meter readings for water usage, and that's what our sewer bills are based on. Goes into our software. We're gonna have software revamped to be able to store that on a monthly basis and regenerate it and prepare the bills properly on a quarterly basis. And I just don't have an answer on what the cost's gonna be. We need to know that.
Ms. Dinnerberry?
Well, we need to keep in mind that we are South County Water. We have a seat at the table, and we're the largest user of South County Water. So I guess I would like to hear from whoever is from this board on South County Water. Is that you, Mr. Supervisor?
Al sits on the board. I also sit on the board, but I wasn't at the meeting where they discussed this. Al, if you want to come on up, but I don't believe.
Well, I mean, I don't need to know it tonight, but if we're going to table it, that is what I need to have as part of the discussion. I mean, have we agreed to this with South County Water? We are South County Water. I understand that the Drain Commission is the operating force for South County Water, but they don't make the decisions, and so I just need to have that information when we have that discussion.
Okay. Any more discussion, Mr. Fredericks?
Well, excuse me. All of the new construction have what are called Raymar meters on the houses. And they drive up and down the road with a truck,
That's how they do it now.
and they read it. So if they're going to go from once quarterly to reading it to once a month reading it, it's just extra cost for them to drive the truck and whatever. I'm not sure, and I think Mr. Francis is going the right direction, and Ms. Turnberry, bring somebody in here to explain what these costs are and whether this makes sense for us to do this. We're 90% of South County Water, and we would be taking 90% of the costs of doing this. So I think it's appropriate, somebody from South County Water come in here and explain to us, one, why they want to do this, two, what are the costs, and three, whether the $36,000, which is the number that's being bandied about, makes any sense. Because I think we're operating on poor or incomplete information, and as a result, we can't make a good business decision on this. And so I agree, Mr. Francis, we ought to move this back until we can get someone from South County to come in here and explain exactly what is going on and why it needs to be done. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Yeah, Rick Blackwood, Al Pryor, they're the two appointments. I'm the alternate, so. Any more discussion? We have a motion on the floor to table. Do I hear support?
Second.
Support of Mr. Clemens. Discussion?
How long did we table it till?
You want to table it one more meeting, Mr. Francis, or two meetings? What do you want?
Why don't we table it till we get the information?
Yeah.
Until we get info.
And get somebody down.
You want to take care of getting somebody here and all that?
I will.
Okay.
Mr. Supervisor, I would recommend that it be at least a month, but you ought to have tabling or postponement for a time certain. That way, if it comes up again, we know what the timing is rather than wait. So I don't care if it's a month or 2 months or whatever the timing is. But that's my view. It ought to be postponed for some time certain.
Any motions? Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, though, we do have to take into consideration that they are pushing toward February, March timeframe, so we may not have a full month. So I would say we try to get that information as quickly as possible and get it back here as quickly as possible, because we may not be able to wait that long. You know, we don't want them to just try to go and enact something without us having some say and then say, oh, it's done. So we need to get that as quickly as we can.
Okay.
Well, the only point is if we don't go along, they don't go along. I think we may be a stumbling block only because we have insufficient information. And I agree with Ms. Steiner, if we have to move, okay, that's fine, but we still should postpone this to a date certain so that we know when it has to come up again. You'd postpone indefinitely, it may never get back on the agenda. So a friendly amendment of 2 weeks.
Make it a month, first
Month?
meeting in February.
That's fine.
Their intended target date is the 1st of March. But we're getting close to that right now, and there's a lot to be done on their end to make that change. So I agree, we should have had a date certain on it.
That month's fine with me.
Okay. Motion supported. Had discussion. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Stein? Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. 8, new business. A, request for approval of vouchers for payment. Ms. Hirschberger?
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, the amount of $61,636.99. Fire District, $11,215.29. Police Fund, $238.59. Park Fund, $1,043.06. Transit System Fund, $35,179. Library Fund, $3,160.79. Water Revenue Fund, $12,900. Sandy Well SAD, $3,948.35. Downtown Development Authority, $432.02. Sewer O&M Fund, $5,691.93. Trust and Agency Fund, $13,469.65, for a grand total of $148,915.67.
I'll second.
Motion is supported by Mr. Francis. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. 8B, request for approval to rezone a portion of a parcel from agricultural to R-3, one family residential on parcel number 5802-034-001-10. Mr. Fredericks?
This is a complex movement tonight, and it took us some time at the Planning Commission to work this out. So if all of you would turn to this page in your documents. The pink portion on the far east side, this piece or this piece, will be divided from the parent parcel and will be combined then with the parcel immediately to the south, which is owned by Wayne Leonard and Sons, Inc. The yellow parcel that is on here will be divided from the parent parcel and combined with the little blue parcel that's to the north, and that will be rezoned at the same time. Since the blue parcel is R3, this is being rezoned to R3 so that we don't have a split zone parcel. Then the remaining parcel, which has a frontage on Jackman Road, will be the resulting parcel in the end. It's about 2.5 acres plus or minus, and it will stay zoned agricultural. So those are the steps, and I have a long motion that I gave you a copy. So that, and I gave one to the clerk so that they do this. So in any event, Mr. Supervisor, I move the most easterly 1.99 acres, more or less, on vacant land, parcel number 5802-010-03812, zoned agricultural, that is agricultural zoning, shall be divided from the current parent parcel and combined with an immediately adjacent southern parcel number 5802-010-03850, owned by Wayne Leonard and Sons, Inc., and the approximately 0.747 acres plus or minus of the easterly portion of vacant land on the resulting parcel, 5802-10-3812, be rezoned from agricultural zoning within the Samaria Village Overlay District to R3, single-family residential within the Samaria Village Overlay District, and the 0.747 acres more or less be divided from the parent parcel number 5802.010.038.12 and combined with the immediately adjacent parcel number to the north 5802.010.038.05 with frontage on Samaria Road. The divisions and combinations respectively to be processed through the appropriate applications under the Township Land Division Ordinance. The rezoning, divisions, and combinations to be approved for the following reasons. The Township Planning Commission recommended approval. The rezoning of the 0.747 acres to R3 single-family residential in combination with the adjacent lot to the north complies with the intent of the Samaria Village Overlay District and eliminates a split zone parcel. The rezoning of the 0.747 acres complies with the master plan for the Samaria reason. The rezoning of the 0.747 acres is consistent with zoning and land uses in the area. The rezoning of the 0.747 acres combined with parcel number 5802.101.038.05 will create a buildable lot in the Samaria Overlay District. The division and combination of the easterly 1.99 acres of parent parcel number 5803.010.038.12 to the southern parcel owned by Wayne Leonard and Sons, Inc. will eliminate a landlocked parcel with no frontage on a road. And the final 2.5 acre parent parcel, 5802.010.038.12, with frontage on Jackman Road will comply with a variance granted by the Township Board of Zoning Appeals on May 1st, 2017, which variance allows a 165-foot frontage and 2.5 acres in an agricultural zoning district.
Second.
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion? Ms. Tinneberry?
The little pink on M150, or Samaria Road, it says street. Is that a street, or is that? what is that?
The little pink thing, that is a paper street. There is no street there. There's a paper street, but it's not been dedicated, nor is it, it's just there. I went up and looked at it, and it's just a grass strip.
Okay,
So
but,
the adjacent neighbors, either side, have been taking care of it.
well, it's pink. I wanted to know if it's attached to the pink.
No, it is not.
Okay, then why
This
is it
pink
pink?
is attached to the, immediately adjacent to the south parcel.
Is it an easement?
No.
Does it give access to Mr. Leonard and Sons?
Yes, this is attached to this parcel below, immediately to the south. This one goes here.
Right,
This
right, I
one
get
just
that.
stays here. Nothing happens with that.
Why is it pink?
I have no idea. That's why it has nothing to do with this.
Well, it relates to the other pink. Is it, so there's.
It
it's-
is not combined with that parcel. It is not, has nothing to do with whatever that thing says, street.
But it doesn't allow access to,
It is a paper street. There's no, I got to use the word, it is a grass strip between two houses. I asked at the Planning Commission if that was used by the Leonards to get to this property, and they said, no, they don't use that. They have other access through other pieces of property. We have some paper streets all over the place.
Mr. Steiner?
And that was marked in planning commission notes, as you said, because I did read that, being a paper street, that Mr. Leonard would not use that for access anyway. You're attaching it to his primary
That
acreage.
is what I heard at the Planning Commission meeting.
And we also spent quite a bit of time in deliberation at the zoning appeals when this approval was granted for the variance to go to 2.5 acre parcels. So there was a lot of deliberation there as well that made sense in this sector.
John Krykoff, 10212 Jackman Road, representing the family ownership. And yes, what Mr. Frederick says is true. It's a paper street, and that's all that it is. And no one owns the street, so it's not owned. It's only maintained by neighbors. Yes, and it's, by all accounts, this process, by the way, that almost 2 acres at the north end of the Leonard has been conveyed to the Leonard family about 12 days ago. So that was ag to ag. That sale is complete, and Mr. Keene has already processed the map on that.
I was going to mention that I've talked to Mr. Keene. All the documentation has been delivered to his office, and all they're waiting is just our approval of both the divisions and combinations and also the rezoning.
Ms. Dinnerberry?
Well, is there additional approval that this board needs to do for the land division?
No.
Okay, so
No,
once...
no, because the land division will be done in Mr. Keene's office, and it meets all the requirements of our Township
Okay.
Land Division and Combination Act as
Okay,
it sets today. So
I
there's
just
no
didn't want
four-
them to have to
no
come
4 to
back.
1, no nothing,
Okay.
no other issues.
I might note the actual small 3/8 acre plus or minus parcel fronting Samaria Road is a buildable lot by itself,
Yeah.
but this creates a higher and better use of land and makes the parcel on Jackman Road exactly 2.5 acres, and everything fits. Thanks. And by the way, I want to thank Mr. Frederick for doing his homework. What a job.
Well, we struggled with it at the Planning Commission because it was difficult to explain what was happening. And then, of course, we talked about the paper street. What is that? But we have paper streets all over the township. In many of the platted subdivision, all of a sudden you'll find a paper street. And my argument has always been, we probably should consider getting rid of them, but that's not our call. That's the motion, that's the position.
Okay. Motion, supported, discussion? Mr. Steiner, you supported that, right? Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Clement?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
Thank you.
Okay, item 8C, request for approval for the sale of 2 Ford Crown Victoria cars. We went through all the vehicles we have, mainly the Crown Victorias. We had Lewis Avenue Auto Shop go through them and check the histories to see what's been done, and we picked the 3 best we have. We swapped out tires to make sure the ones we are keeping have fresh tires, or the best tires. We've basically blue booked them. They're roughly around, I think it was $2,500 blue book value and up there. And you typically, for a car like this where you're taking off lights, you can't open the back doors from the inside because they're a police vehicle. So, and they just have holes. You typically can knock off some money. So we're putting a minimum bid, looking at about $1,500 for each one of these vehicles, which I think is a good deal at that. So I'm hoping, the bids go up from there, but the minimum would be $1,500, which I'd be happy to get that out of both of them, or each one of them. So that's kind of where we're at. Get rid of a couple of the vehicles that are, costing us a lot of money to upkeep. And I feel like the vehicles we have right now will last us many years. So we'd like to sell them. And Trudy, if you want to kind of go over how we plan to sell them the same way as last time.
I was just going to put them on the web with a minimum bid and let people put in sealed bids.
Could put it on Facebook as well and let people know to go to the website, and so. Ms. Tinneberry?
The pictures that you put on here, which ones are they?
None of those.
Well, these are just examples of different cars that were blue booked
Oh,
for around the same year and mileage to compare pricing.
well, I'm just thinking, okay, so we're going more like the 2007? Because the 2008s are a lot more than 1,500.
Yeah, they're 2008 and,
Okay, well, the pictures don't match, so.
2008, so yeah.
So we have 2 of them.
Yeah.
That's what
We have
this
2 of them,
says.
yes.
We have 2 2008 Ford Crown Victorias. Okay, just curious. Don't fool us by the pictures next time, because I thought it was one of them.
Oh, okay. Mr. Fredericks?
Have all the markings been removed from the cars?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have a question.
All the lights, markings.
That's fine, good. I just want to be sure.
And these cars, they do have, check engine lights on, and they do need some work, so they're not in tip-top shape, so we figured that was a good price range to start at, so. Mr. Fredericks?
I move that we offer two 2008 Ford Crown Victorias for sale, and that the notice of for sale be placed on the website and in newspapers, that the minimum bid for each car should be not less than $1,500, and all bids shall be received on or before.
I usually give it at least a couple weeks, so.
Okay, within 2 weeks of the posting.
Okay, motion, supported by Ms. Stenberry?
No,
Or do you have a question?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, you can get support on.
Oh, you support?
I'll support.
Okay, supported by Mr. Clements. Discussion, Stenberry?
Are these sealed bids? Because it needs to be noted,
Yes.
sealed bids.
Sealed bids.
Yeah,
Okay.
good, friendly amendment, I accept that. Go.
Mr. Supervisor,
Yeah.
can we, when we get time to actually consummate the sale, can we make sure that the sale is as is with all faults, no warranties expressed or
That's
implied?
what I put in the bid.
Good.
All my bids are like
I
that,
wrote
as is, whereas, no warranty of any kind.
Thank you.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Yes,
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 8D, discussion on the public position on medical marijuana. Okay, I'll take this one. I've been dealing with this, going to MTA meetings, talking with residents. I've met with the Detroit lawyer who represents a group. There seems to be a lot of confusion on the issue. So I thought it would be best, for the purpose of the discussion, I'd be looking to see what the board would like to go forward as a process to gauge the public's opinion on the expansion of the growing marijuana in Bedford Township. So basically, we're to a point to where we need to decide whether or not we want to go forward with some sort of survey, gauge the public, engage them and figure out, where we're at with them. And I'm kind of looking for some board direction of how you guys want to move forward with this. I know it's been something we've all have been looking at. We have a very thick packet in front of us of information that Mr. Fredericks has gathered, Mr. Pryor has gathered, myself has gathered through all the meetings, and we have a lot of information. There's some unanswered questions. I've met with multiple people, talked to hundreds that want to get into the business, and this is where we're at. So I'm just going to open it up for discussion. It's kind of vague of what I put on there. So if anybody wants to open up, Ms. Tinnevery?
Did you happen to contact the PAR plan to find out why they were recommending action one way or the other?
I contacted Mr. Goldsmith and asked him about, why they're recommending this, because when I went to MTA meetings, they said you didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, in this document, it says you don't have to do anything, but with all due respect to Mr. Goldsmith, he's not in the risk management business. So, I'd be interested in knowing. This came during the whole holiday thing, and I was planning on calling the PAR plan, but haven't yet. So I'm interested in knowing what their position is.
I could call the PAR plan.
I also noticed that 5 communities in Monroe County have opted out. None have opted in. And of the leaning to opt out if we're going to do anything. However, as this document has, specifically said, you don't have to do anything. in order to, communicate that you're not interested in having these facilities in your community. So if that's the case, that's fine with me, except they're our risk management people. They're the ones that have to deal with, along with, Mr. Goldsmith in terms of any kind of legal matters. And so I just want to know what our insurance.
Did you happen to research that when I called you? Or?
Yeah, and I replied to the email, if you might recall, but
I saw your email. I just didn't see anything about the power plant's comments.
well, that article that you referred to was written by a field representative, a field claims representative, but it's my opinion, well, first of all, let's back up. The act does not require a unit of government to do anything.
Right.
And that was specifically negotiated in the process. When the act was first presented, it required a unit of government to actually opt out if they didn't want to have any one of the 5 facilities within their geographical limitation or limits. But I think at this time, if the board desires not to proceed, in other words, to opt out and not allow any one of the 5 facilities or any combination of the 5 facilities, that it would be in the board's best interest to adopt a resolution stating so. That can be changed if in the future the board decides to go in a different direction and to allow a facility. But that is it's an expression of the board's decision and intent not to allow any of the facilities within Bedford Township. It's not required, but I think it's a good idea because that lets the public know that that's your official opinion at that time. It can be changed. A resolution is not etched in stone, but it can be changed. But at least that's an official expression of the board's intent at that time. If the board decides to what's been called opting in, of course, then we have to adopt an ordinance, and we have to identify those facilities that will be allowed in Bedford Township. So we would actually be adopting 2 ordinances, a general code ordinance, which would set forth the regulations for each one of the facilities that the township would allow, and then a zoning ordinance that would designate what zones those facilities would be allowed in. And in part, that's controlled by the state statute. So,
Mr. Goldsmith.
long story short, go ahead, Mr.
In writing that ordinance, would that ordinance be written along with the home occupation ordinance? Would we write one ordinance for Bedford Township and involve both, or you do?
No, they're two different things. Our home occupation ordinance applies only to the ballot proposal that was approved.
And that's the way I understood it. I just had a discussion with somebody today that said they would be together, and I didn't think that was true.
No, I think what we would do is amend our home occupation ordinance to include some additional information within that ordinance. I think we should do that regardless of what we do.
I agree.
Secondly, that would be totally different because it's a totally different act, and the Medical Marijuana Act that was recently passed specifically states that it doesn't affect the prior legislation, the prior act, so that would remain, and we would be adopting a new ordinance that would be regulatory in nature, and also a zoning ordinance amendment that would specify where facilities could be. So to specifically answer Nancy's question, I would say I agree with the PAR plan that it would be useful for the township if you decided to opt out to adopt a resolution specifying why, and then that becomes the official position of the township until changed.
Can I go on? Do you still represent Erie Township as well as Bedford?
Yes.
And I noticed they are in the opt-out area. What have you done for them? I mean, what was their?
They at a recent meeting decided to opt out, and they they did adopt a resolution stating so.
Okay.
Mr. Steiner?
And I agree, Ms. Tinbury said numerous times, and in this article, numerous times by MTA and other authorities making the comment about not having to take an actual action for a resolution. And Mr. Goldsmith, I'm glad you clarified. So we don't just opt out, but to opt out, we create a resolution saying we're opting out if that's our decision. And then also the further that I read, there's still some difficulties even within the law. There's still a lot of confusion. It would be hard to even opt in if we wanted to, because of the fact that we'd be opting into something that we don't even know what the laws even say yet. So it'd be like the horse behind the cart, right? You know, if you do further research online, federal law goes all the way back as far as Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, Barack Obama, Jeff Sessions, President Trump, all of them. Federal law supersedes state law. And it says it is illegal. So I know that there's enforcement issues there when it comes to legalities of how you're going to enforce it. I don't know how you're going to enforce it. Mr. Tisdale made a comment there, and I was making some comments today. I said, you know, first off, we've got a heroin epidemic in this country that we're fighting today. So let's make the next thing easier. Do we want to put marijuana on the streets? And just make it legal. And I said, it's not only the safety, put people in their cars, put people in schools, put people in their jobs. I mean, think of all the jobs out there that are done today that if I'm impaired and I'm doing that job, just because I said, well, it's legal now that I can do it, I would hope that if anything like that happens, the companies make their policy strict as possible that prohibits that. I work in the automotive industry, and I've seen some pretty ugly stuff, not firsthand, but when I see it in writing, what happens in plants, it's not pretty. And a lot of times, a good majority of the time, is because people are impaired by something, whether it's drugs, alcohol, pot, you know, whatever. I just have a major concern for our society. I think it's going downhill fast. Why keep making things that much more easier to get? The other side of it, I hear people talk about medical marijuana. Well, I don't really hear that there's a shortage of medical marijuana out there that we have to have all these vendors. So, again, why do we need all these? We've got processing facilities we talk about, and reading through the articles too, and of course it comes into my mind, and then I read it. It says facilities like that have a lot of cash movement. People know that people are traveling with cash. What does that lead to? Well, guess what? Big opportunity for crime. Then they talk about the businesses between where they started and where those centers are. A lot of those places tend to get hit. And so on and so on. And, you know, I know Mr. Tisdale is a former police officer, Mr. Clements, former police officer. I know a few other ones myself. And I haven't heard any real good stories yet to make it worthwhile. I will just flat out say that I'm in favor of opting out. So that's my position.
Any more discussion? Mr. Fredericks?
I get the Detroit Free Press on a regular basis. And as of December 15th, when the state opened the doors for applications for any one of the 5 opportunities, they were expecting a huge crowd. They had set up turnstiles and ropes as though you were at the TSA program at Detroit Airport. Well, interestingly, on the first day, 9 applications came in. The second day, 8 applications came in. Those were complete applications, meaning they had a spot to go to, they had complied with all of the rules, had the economic underpinnings that are required. And then there were 58 other applications that were just tossed over the transom so that they could start the background investigation of the people who were making application. The state was expecting hundreds of people to come banging through the doors. It didn't happen. I also have information in terms of how many, at least as of December 28th, the Free Press said in other than Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties, 12 cities is all in the whole state that have opted in, 19 townships, and we have 1,250 townships or something like that in the state. And at that time, there were 19 and only 5 villages. There were 3 or 4 or 5 township cities and villages in the 3 Wayne, Oakland, Macomb County area. The problem is, I think some of them are waiting to see what happens with the petition for legalizing recreational marijuana. They may be waiting to see what happens here. I don't know, but so far, that's the kind of information I have from the paper. Now, whether that's the final piece of evidence and anything, I don't know. But clearly, there's not a great rush to find all of this manna from heaven that they were talking about with $700 million in taxes a year and all these other things. So I'm simply saying that because of the uncertainty in how this is going to go forward, not a lot of people have signed up in terms of filing applications to become either a grower or a transporter or a dispensary, whatever. And there's one other piece of information I found quite interesting, and that is before the new regulations were passed here, there are 218,000 medical marijuana cardholders in Michigan that were relying on 38,100 registered caregivers. Detroit has passed an ordinance that will be effective in 2 or 3 days, and they have a pile of dispensaries in the city of Detroit. What they're going to do, I think, I'm interested in finding out how this goes forward with those applications. I have talked to the county health department, simply because I know them. They have no say in this whatsoever because they're a county agency. But I would suspect if you really took Kim Cormazan to the corner and said, how do you feel about this? As the head of the health department, they probably would not be in support of any of this. I served on the board of the Monroe County Mental Health Authority for 9 years. There are substance abuse problems with folks having mental health disabilities, developmental disabilities and others. So I have seen firsthand what happens in trying to handle substance abuse issues. I did give some information about a month ago to the school board, and I have not followed up to find out what their thoughts are, but I couldn't believe that the school board would say, oh, go right ahead. I don't believe that, but that's neither here nor there. So the question becomes, do we know what the feelings of our community are? We can sit up here and talk the rest of the night on what the community might or might not be. One of the things that you could do, as Erie did it, I believe, is go out and do a short survey, find out what the feeling of the community really is. And then you would respond to that. That's one way, or we can simply just plow ahead and say, okay, it's going to be A or B. I don't know which we're going to do. I think we would discuss that going forward. And one last thing, that I think Mr. Steiner brought up is, from a federal perspective, still illegal as hell. So I don't think I would want to be in the business and wait for Jeff Sessions to come banging on my door and shut me down. But thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay, any more discussion? Mr. Francis?
The laws that were recently passed by the state, in its inimitable wisdom, sets up, what, 5 or 6 different categories of licensing that you can, that they will authorize. Those licenses aren't cheap. They're start at $5,000 and they go up from that. And that's an annual fee. So this, to me, is all about money. It's not about providing help for those that need it medically. We talked about that before. Those that need it medically can get that medical marijuana card and get what they need locally right now, either in Toledo or out here if they have some a caregiver that handles a certain number of clients. So to me, this is all about money, and the people that are putting a lot of pressure on, and there is a lot of pressure and a lot of money behind this, because it's hugely profitable. So what has the state done? It's created big businesses can take that opportunity, and the little people can't. And they're in it for one reason, profit. To me, you shouldn't adopt policies based on profit. That's the wrong reason for a policy, in my opinion. I don't think we know what the effects of this would be. Maybe we ought to wait to find out some that have opted in. Let's talk to them a year from now or 6 months from now. Well, what's your experience been? Has other crime increased? It has in Colorado. It has in California. California legalized recreational yesterday. I read an article, in the middle of December, where they have licenses out there, where the underground economy, they're just growing it as they want. And it's up to the local unit of government to police their own area and take care of the ones that are doing it illegally. And they're doing that, and they're running out of money. They're having second thoughts about the illegal market that is going to increase. You know, if you allow big businesses come in with their big checkbooks and control the price of it, that'll only increase the illegal, I think. I don't think we're in a position right now to make a reasonable judgment on this. We need to wait.
Okay, any more discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, earlier in the meeting tonight, we decided to table the issue on seasonal support staff because the data we had was incomplete. That's our responsibility as this board when we have incomplete data, is to not make decisions which could expose our residents and/or the people we grant permission to. Right now, there is so much incomplete data on this subject matter, it's impossible to make a knowledgeable decision. There's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of predictions on what's going to happen, and so far, statistically speaking, overwhelmingly townships are opting out. I think there's times in life where being a forerunner is fantastic, but those are calculated moments when the liability and exposure are limited. I think when you're talking about this issue, there are some significant liability issues that need to be addressed. And while this may or may not be something that residents do or don't want, until the 7 of us have enough data to come to a articulable conclusion, I just think it's premature to do anything with it. At a minimum, I think it would be irresponsible to move forward until we have more information, and it may be wise for us to sit back and watch what these other communities that opted in did. The fact of the matter is we have the ability to put something on a meeting agenda within a week. So if all of a sudden it's going great guns and it's the greatest thing that's ever happened, then that's a path this board could take. At the same time, why would we expose 33,000 residents to the potential problems because of the unknown? So I struggle with the unknowns tonight. And I think the one last thing that we would contemplate, and someone brought it up from the podium during public comment, is when you talk about dollars and cents in our township, The cost of a survey is a lot of money. The cost of the survey is the exact same thing as, or very close to a seasonal position employee. And so we have to weigh those hard decisions as to, do we need the employee? Do we need somebody else on the road salting and taking care of snow? Or do we have the luxury of spending that money on a survey that may or may not yield even a valid result to begin with? So I feel like we need to take pause and make sure that whatever steps we take are reasonable and they're factually based as opposed to emotionally or opinionated. Thank you.
Any more discussion? Mr. Fredericks?
I think Mr. Clements has a good idea, but I would ask so that we can determine how to go forward with some other issues here. Could you find out how much it would cost to have a survey? Now, we got 11,000, something like that, parcels. So, one, what would it cost? Two, how would we go about it? What's the process? And three, so that we can either look at it or throw it away as a process of determining what our citizens feel. Now, one of the problems with a survey, we all know, you can almost get the answers you want by the way you frame the survey. And secondly, 17% of the people responding is probably a good number. But at the same time, I think if we understood that kind of a cost in the process, and you don't have to get it down to nickels and dimes, just give us some kind of a general idea. We can either say, okay, it's a good idea, or it may be too expensive, but at least we have some kind of an idea about what that would cost if we were to test the feeling of the community.
Mr. Steiner?
I don't disagree. Mr. Clemens made some good points. The one thing I will still say is I still think it's a good idea that we opt out at this time. In the future, if this board or another board decides to take a different direction at that point, once there's more information available, stating all the laws, how it's going to be enforced, how the whole program's going to work, at that time, there could be an ordinance created where the township would opt into a program. So I think, again, because right now we've got people saying, get off your duff, make some kind of decision, go one way or the other. Let's give our citizens a decision that we can make. If we opt out, that's fine. And then if we can go forward someday, if somebody decides to make a decision to create an ordinance because we want to do it, it can be done. The one thing it does keep us out is if we opt out, if the state does different things and people create challenges to the state, we can't be challenged because we have opted out of the program.
Okay. Any more discussion? Ms. Hirschberger?
The survey, just for kicks and giggles, I went online to see what SurveyMonkey would cost us, and it would cost us about $400. But you'd have to come up with the questions and everything, and it has different things that you can use depending on what questions, how you want to pose those questions, who you want your audience to be. So that's a price for a survey.
I guess that's
If
the
we go that
direction.
way.
Ms. Tinderberry?
SurveyMonkey is strictly online.
Exactly.
Correct.
That's my point.
I know hundreds of people that don't go online and would never go to the township website, would not be involved in that. I am not in favor of a survey. I don't think that it's valuable. However, if you're going to do a survey, Mr. Frederick might make that his article for the update, and then that goes to everyone. But to me, SurveyMonkey, not that it's expensive, but it won't reach half your population.
And there's a lot of people also, today's society with everything, everybody says, don't click a link that you don't recognize. I've had survey monkeys come across where, at work, where they've been found to still be spam or something like that. Don't touch them. So a lot of people won't even touch a link anyway. And again, you won't even reach half the people if you went electronically.
I just looked at SurveyMonkey because that's what we did for our master plan, and we had paper copies too that people could pick up and they could fill them out and bring them in. It was just one survey that I knew worked for our master plan, so I looked at pricing for that. But like I said, it was on our website, people could go to it, but there were also paper copies that people could pick up that didn't want to go computer. We could use the newsletter too to get that information out. It was just one avenue that I looked into in case the question came up, that's all.
I'm glad you did.
Well, we have 25,000 registered voters in Bedford Township and roughly 32,000 residents. So if we wanted to do something to where we send it out to registered voters, it would cost a lot of money. I think roughly around $10,000 just to get it to them for the mailing, and it would have to be watermarked. But then you got to get it back here. If you don't put a return stamp on it, how many people are going to return the envelope? I think that's one issue Erie ran into, was a lot of people did not respond. They don't want to put the 50-cent stamp on there. For us to put the 50-cent return stamp on there, add $12,000 more. Or, yeah, roughly $12,500. So then the mailing basically doubles. I'm looking for direction to go forward. If the board does not want to do a survey, let me know. If the board wants to go a different avenue, that's what I'm looking for. I'm getting phone calls every day from many, many different people and companies and entrepreneurs, and so that's what I'm looking for. Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, you had discussion on the
Yeah, just
agenda,
discussion,
so for
yeah.
tonight, I think we should just have discussion and until tonight, we have not heard the other board members' direction, opinion, whatever.
Okay.
So I think that, to have some time to digest all of that, and, our attorney said that doing nothing is an option, and so for the time being, I agree with Mr. Steiner, but I also think that a few weeks to digest is not gonna be a problem.
But doing nothing isn't a long-term option, I don't feel like.
No,
It's a couple weeks.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not for doing nothing, I'm just for giving it some time.
Mr. Steiner?
I make a motion to put the subject on the next board meeting agenda to make a decision which direction the township is going to take, whether we go for a resolution to opt out or proceed to do completely nothing, or the other one would be to have an ordinance that would allow it.
Next meeting?
It's 2 weeks.
Okay, got a motion on the floor,
I'll support.
supported by Ms. Tinneberry. Discussion?
So we
Seeing
would-
none?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
So it would be either in or out or do nothing. Those are the only three options.
It's pretty much what it is that's what they are. You've got three options.
Yeah.
You either opt in and create an ordinance, you completely opt out, or just do nothing, period.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we got a motion and a second.
I got some discussion.
Discussion, Mr. Francis?
Does that mean we're not even going to try to find out what the residents feel?
Yeah, that's a problem I have.
I kind of like the idea of having a survey, but I don't like the idea of having a $400 one. I don't think you get anything you can base a major decision on. I see this as a major decision that affects this township for a long time. Maybe we ought to look into other types of surveys that might be more statistically supportable. They do a lot of surveys when you're running for office. Not local level, but national, they do them every day. I don't think the legislatures in even Lansing do anything without surveys. Maybe we ought to take a look at what kind of a survey might be a, quote, reasonable cost that might get us a good sampling. I don't know what that is. I'm just throwing it out. Because at least then, if you get a valid survey back, you'd have some idea, well, what does the community feel? Before we take that survey, whatever type, I think that people ought to know what some of the drawbacks are, what the laws allow right now, those 5 different types of licenses, what kind of financial backing do you have to even apply for a license? And it's substantial. I think the cheapest one is, what, $150,000 financial backing, and it goes up to, what, $500,000 financial backing that you have to have before you can even be approved for the license. I think there's some, maybe some individuals or investors in this township that would have that kind of financial backing. But that's the issue you're looking at, in my view. It's not the small people, it's the big business coming in to take over. Maybe the public ought to know some of those facts before they even get the survey.
Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Mr. Fredericks?
Well, vis-à-vis a survey, you don't have to survey the entire population.
It's true.
I'm sure there are organizations that could say, now I'm really outside of what I know about this kind of stuff. 250 residents over here, 250 over here, 250 to the south and 250 to the north. And if they can tell who's going to be elected president by looking at about 1,000 people coming out the door, there are probably ways to do, I don't know that, but you don't have to do every citizen in the community to get a feeling. I guess one of the questions would be how you do that, and I don't know. But the last thing is, would we expect any different from what we got at Erie? I don't know that either. But I'm only saying that there may be ways that one looks at it saying, okay, we'll take a statistical sample of the citizens. I mean, I suppose you could stand over at Kroger's and do that. In any event, that's just a point that I was thinking about. But that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Any more discussion?
Call the question.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Thanks a lot.
Sorry.
No, because I think 2 weeks is too short of time period.
Mr. Clemens?
I agree with Mr. Francis. I think, I'm a no. I don't think 2 weeks is near enough time.
Mr. Frederick?
No, I'd like to have a little longer time to think about it.
I'm going to vote no, because I would like more time, too.
I'll vote no as well.
Mr. Supervisor?
Mr. Steiner?
Gee, folks, you know what? That would have taken any one of you on this board, except for me and Ms. Tinberry that made the motion and second, would have taken you 10 seconds to say, can we do 2 more weeks? Instead, we want to just try to blast it down like that. I'm really shocked that you did that. All you had to do was ask, and it probably would have said, I'll accept a friendly amendment to go 2 additional weeks or whatever. But I mean, this makes no sense for us not to start making some decisions.
I don't disagree with you. I think everything you've said is right. I just struggle with the 2 weeks.
And again, like I said, everybody here could have made that comment, said, hey, give me 2 more weeks. And we could have pushed it another 2 to the first meeting in February.
Mr. Fredericks?
I move that we postpone this, further discussion on this until the first meeting in March. How's that?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
I'll support that.
Supported by Ms. Tinneberry. Discussion?
I'm easy.
Okay, seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion is passed 7-0. Okay, 9, comments from the public. Comments limited to 5 minutes for each individual. Please sign in or...
I just might as well put my name there all the time to sign in, so it's there. Logan Tisdale, 1308 Brandywine Street. 3,500 years ago, a guy sent 12 guys out to take a survey. They were looking at a land they'd never seen before, and they said they sent 12 guys out to look at it. 10 guys came back and said, we ain't going to be able to take this land. 2 guys went out there and said, you know what, we can take the land. So surveys depend on how you think. And the bottom line is you can send out surveys all day long, and you're going to get the same thing here. Somebody's going to say this, somebody's going to say that. What does your heart say?
Amen.
We vote you into office thinking that you represent us. You don't have to take a survey on everything that happens here. You don't have to take a survey on Monroe County Sheriffs. You don't have to take a survey on this. What does your heart tell you? I was a policeman for 23 years. I never had one good experience with a druggie. You know how many police officers have been killed by druggies? Drunk drivers? People that abuse alcohol and that? You think that that's going to suddenly change because we make a decision? They had some big complex here and stuff like that. That's going to help Monroe County? That's going to help Bedford? You think that's going to help any of the people that have to employ these people that smoke pot all day long? You want to be riding down the road and a guy going northbound, you're going southbound, he's on his phone texting and smoking dope? I certainly don't want to have to face that in my life. Now, people may not like that, but I've seen the effects of it. I've seen it firsthand. My wife saw it firsthand when she worked for the Department of Human Services. And yeah, I don't expect any respect from people here, but I already know what I've seen. And this is my opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion here as a citizen, as a voter in this township. I lived there 35 years. I was a policeman for 23 years. And people want to smoke dope, do it at home, and don't do it out on the road, but that's what's going to happen. We lost 100,000, 50,000 people one year in the United States back in the 60s. We lost 1,000 people in Michigan here last year on the highways from alcohol-related drugs. It's the same problem. It's the way people look at things. And the bottom line is we start making things legal. You know, I have no problem with people taking medical marijuana. I have no problem with that. If that helps them and they can do that legally, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I just don't want to see it legalized in this country. And if that's going to happen, then you know what? Then we're in trouble. And that's what's going to happen. And then before you know it, cocaine will be legal. Then before you know it, opium will be legal. When do we stop? Is that not going to affect your kids? I'm going to be dead long before it does that. But my kids and my grandchildren are going to be affected by that, and so are yours. You people need to step up to the plate and start making decisions without taking surveys every time something comes to the table here. I don't know why it doesn't take any bravery to do that. Speak your mind. What does the Lord tell you? I know some of you are Christians. What does the Lord tell you? What does the Word say about this? You know, people are addicted to everything. Maybe they ought to be addicted to Christianity. That's the only thing that's going to set them free. And you're taking drugs, you're not free. I don't care what anybody says. I know people that are alcoholics. You know what? They are not free. I don't drink anymore. You know why? Because I know that when I'm under the influence of alcohol, I am not free. I can't make a rational decision. I can't drive down the road. I can't even say my alphabet. So don't go tell me what I've seen over 23 years. And I don't care what people say out here. If they don't like it, that's too bad. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Just state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Hillary Delaney. I am a business owner in Temperance at 8955 Lewis Avenue. I'm probably also the only Michigan resident in the entire state that also has both medical and recreational licenses in Oregon. We moved out there 3.5 years ago to get into the industry a little further. Sorry, my voice is shaking. I don't do a lot of public speaking. But I am here basically to put a face to the questions that you have and the uncertainties that you have. I respect your opinions greatly. And
Please comment to the chair,
Oh, sorry.
please. Thank you.
And I respect Mr. Steiner's opinions greatly. But I've lived in this system and I've operated in it. And I can honestly tell you that the regulations in our industry are so strict. Our $15,000 camera system in our processing lab, which has a level 1 explosion room that hospitals and labs have to have, our explosion room costs $80,000. One plug costs $500. Our camera system has to monitor everyone, and that has to be accessible by the state. There's not 1 inch of our entire facility that is not viewable by the state. In fact, they came in and told us we needed more cameras, so we put more in. I can tell you that the system that we operate under, when we moved to Oregon, I had been in the industry. Just a little background on me. I've been in this industry for 10 years. I come from an extremely conservative family that owns a law firm in this town. I come from a place where this is not a regular thing. And when I started learning about it and understanding the medical aspects of it and seeing what it did for a friend of mine that moved from Ohio to Michigan that had tremor disorders, it made me decide that this is what I wanted to do. And everything that I have business-wise, I have built from the ground up. I started a company out of my spare bedroom 5 years ago with a $2,000 loan. And I built it into a company that I now operate out of the West Coast and in Temperance, Michigan. And I operate in all 50 states. And I did that with these two hands and nothing. And I took the money from that and I moved to Oregon. And I have reinvested every dollar I've ever made. I live very meagerly. And I invest everything I have into my business. And I understand not knowing what you don't know. I fully do. I have literally lived through what everyone here is concerned about or worried about. I moved to Oregon when the medical program was coming from an unregulated market, just like Michigan, into a regulated market, and recreational was on the ballot. So I've lived through 2 separate licensing processes, multiple screenings, and I understand the system extremely well. One of the things that I hope to help in this, and I would love to be able to provide my contact information. We have attorneys, we have accountants, and we have business people in our partnerships from Michigan out in Oregon that are also developing here. We moved home to do land acquisitions and to start expanding our brand here because I believe in it so much. Our brand, we did massive research with nurses and doctors. It's a very cooperative community on the West Coast to receive assistance, help, education. And we focus a lot on women and on baby boomer crowds because those are the people medically that actually need this product the most, if we're talking on medical terms. Now, I won't get into recreational right now, but it does have a place. And one of the things that I am so adamant about is when I hear people talk about how it's going to be on the streets and how it's going to be, you know, horrible. What people don't understand, and when you guys do your survey, I think there should be some sort of educational component in it because the residents, I've gone to so many township meetings, board meetings, that they don't truly understand what it means for the community and what it's going to look like. I know what it looks like because I live between Michigan and Oregon. I can tell you that I operate in one of the most well-to-do communities in Oregon where Fortune 500 companies have beautiful houses like a mile from our facility. They don't even know we exist. The things that if you don't opt in right now, because there's the old law and there's the new law. The old law allows someone right next door.
Your time is up.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your comments. No. We did away with it about 4 months ago. State your name and address, please.
Oh, Carol Stevens, 7520 Wellesley, Lambertville. I'm a little older than not most of you, but close. But not you. So, I'm 60s. I heard the word marijuana. Until yesterday, there was a thread on on Facebook. I was the only citizen that participated in that thread. I wonder why. I still wonder why. I didn't get any answers. It was a runaround. Total runaround. There's a money trail somewhere. I mean, whatever she wants to tell you, she can tell you. I don't know the facts. But I started, I'm one of those people that when I want to know something, I want to know. I had a very wise man tell me one time, if you're going to ask the question, do your research and find the answer. And he's sitting right there. The one thing I want to say that sitting over there just made my blood boil. You guys all ran for office. Every single one of you ran for office to make decisions for me and every other citizen that lives in Bedford Township. Why did you just spend 15 minutes talking about a freaking survey? Seriously. You've got a community. You know what your community You've got the feel of the community. We're a bedroom community of Toledo. We don't want to be Toledo. We don't want 5,000 people coming up here to get their medical marijuana. I'm sorry, I'm way offline here. Where she came from, it's a 17% tax on marijuana. Washington State is 37%. There's 130 acres going in Harvest Park by Lansing. I want to read you something about Hillsdale City Council. This came up to them. Because the possession and distribution of marijuana is still a federal crime, the council has decided not to put the local law enforcement at odds with federal law by opening the city to the drug. If you opt in, it's almost impossible to get out. If we continue to opt out, we can always opt in. Representatives, and this was where I'm going with this, get somebody knowledgeable. Representatives from Michigan State University came to Hillsdale earlier this year to provide training to the council and city employees. Don't look in your packets. Don't look at each other. Don't look up on the internet. Get the facts. I mean, I know nothing. Here's another one. We felt we're a bedroom farming and family community. What is Bedford? What is Bedford? She said, and we don't think anyone raising a family would want that in their backyard. This came from West Bloomfield Township. And they said the township is willing to forego the tax revenues that would come from medical marijuana. And I'm sorry, as a citizen, prior to looking at these things today, and my husband was ready to kick me out the door if I said marijuana one more time, I would have said, why not? No, I don't want it here. I don't. I do not want it here. And I can guarantee you, I will go stand at Kroger's, and I will take a petition, and I will take a survey. And you will find that the percentage is going to be very, very low. If you're watching anything on social media, I know some of you do, some of you don't. We like our community the way it is. Why do you want to change it? Don't change it. You've got the information. Make a damn decision.
Thank you for your comments. I just want to remind everybody that we had just made a motion before this for a month from now to opt in, opt out, or do nothing. There was no decision, there was no motion on a survey, so we're not doing a survey.
That's 2 months.
Just wanted to make that clear.
It got pushed 2 months.
2 months? Pushed 2 months?
You said March.
You said March, okay, I thought you said a month. Okay, sign in and state your name and address. You can do that first, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll sign it afterwards. My name's Alyssa Satori, 8418 Keitha Drive. Carol, I'm actually...
Please address the chair, please.
Okay. I am a resident of Bedford, and also I spend my life in the issue of medical cannabis. I won't take my full 5 minutes because a lot of what I have to share doesn't A, fit into that time, and is also both for public consumption as well as for the board. I would like to mention that I've sent in a professional capacity 2 emails to each member of the board and did not receive a response. And I'd like to re-offer at this point in time my services to you for free. I am hired by townships at times, companies, in order to help people through this process. One thing that I did hear from the board this evening that I agreed with is you are definitely not at the point where it would be wise to make a decision. The amount of outdated and misinformation that I have heard presented tonight is mind-boggling. When the information is readily available to be researched. A lot of the drug war propaganda that was presented tonight is absolutely 100% outdated. The research is being done, science is showing, and most folks that have taken the time to update their understanding of the issue don't even spend time debating some of the things that were brought up tonight. And really, that's no one in this room's fault. When we presented, my colleague and I presented to the Monroe chapter of the Michigan Township Association, there was not a single representative of this board present. And we did hand out these wonderful packets that actually have quite a bit of the information that you seemed to be asking for tonight in them. People pay thousands of dollars for consultants like me to come in and educate the public and to talk and explain laws to people. I've been involved in multiple townships through their opt-in processes in states, and my day job is changing state cannabis laws. Again, I'd like to offer my services to you for free. I know about surveys. I know how to do them. I also know a lot of the other things that you folks were saying tonight. Hey, we don't even know where to start here. Yes, I am pro-cannabis. Yes, I am a patient advocate. I'm also extremely educated on the issue and an excellent resource that lives here, that you could take advantage of for free, that I can open doors for you that people pay thousands of dollars to get that information for, and I just don't understand why it's not being utilized, when the real question seems to be, hey, where's the missing information so we can make an informed decision? Last thing, the things that are missing from this, as Mr. Francis so well pointed out, everything's about the money. Not for me, not for patients, not for advocates, not for people who work in this issue every single day. And certainly as a resident and a mother in this community, community safety and integrity belong in this conversation. Safety belongs at the front of the conversation, not just for community residents, but also for patients. And patience should be the most common thing mentioned. Thank you for your time. I'll provide my information and also these packets for you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Don't forget to sign in, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Edward Rocco, 3212 West Sylvania Avenue. I'm an investor. I'm a business person. I've heard a huge amount of bad, just downright bad information. I have not heard one positive thing come out of this group about cannabis. 29 states, 29 have legalized cannabis. There are 215,000 registered patients in the state. There are over 35,000 caregivers. The only thing that you're going to do by opting out of this is push that money and push your constituents elsewhere. That's all you're going to do. Every one of you seems like a very shrewd person, period. And it seems as though you care about your constituents. I do too. I want to provide your constituents with clean, affordable medicine. I keep hearing everything about it's all about the money. It's not all about the money. If you've tracked anything in different states, the price drops. After this business gets going, the competition takes over and the price plummets. It doesn't just fall, it plummets. So it's not all about the money. It's about, again, providing clean meds to people that really need them. It's important. Epileptics. 6 years ago, I thought to myself, that marijuana, it's crazy. It's insane. I started doing a little bit of research, and one of my friends on Facebook, as a matter of fact, was an epileptic, and he started telling me about how marijuana has helped him with his seizures. He was having 1 to 2 seizures a day. Now he's 2 or 3 a month. Cannabis. By using cannabis. It's helped them immensely. We don't have the fears these people have. This guy cannot leave his house because he's afraid he's going to have a seizure. Now, when you have a seizure, you wake up, you're confused, you don't know where you're at, you forget things, you lose that time. Now he's able to drive his car, he's able to go out in public, he's able to do the things that you and I enjoy on a daily basis. And without cannabis, he would not be able to do that. Also, the competition, the fair market competition, has brought the price substantially down on cannabis. We were getting $50 to $80 a gram out of Colorado on an extract, just anything for an oil, if you will. Now we're getting about $12 to $17 wholesale. Not quite as large of a profit margin there. We're lucky to make 20% after Colorado takes its 23.8% tax, which we're happy to pay. It provides parks, recreational facilities for the state. It provides money for their coffers. Yes, it does provide some money for the state, which is a good thing, because every single one of you people, in my mind at this point, are good people, and I think you will take that money and use it for the right thing. And I'm hoping that you don't hop on the sled down the slippery slope like some people have. That is all. I hope you have a good evening, and thanks for having me.
Please sign in, sir. You didn't sign in before. Okay, thank you.
Ken Gagne, 8311 Lambert Street. I'm not going to talk about marijuana. I'm going to talk about the sewer bill. I like mine quarterly. One of the reasons is at the meeting last month, it was going to cost approximately $18,000 to $20,000 for postage. And then it was going to cost roughly $16,000 to $18,000 for more help. I think that's a lot of money. I did a little research. I called South County Water and I asked them, how much is it going to cost you in postage to go from quarterly to monthly? He answered my question with a question. Why do you want to know? I said, I'm just curious how much the postage is going to cost, because I was at a meeting at Bedford Township, and it's going to cost between $18,000 and $20,000 for postage to go to monthly. Well, he said, we haven't really checked into it that much. So there's your answer, Nancy. And the other thing is, he says, we got a lot of delinquent. We have 100 a month delinquent. I said, try shutting the water off. They'll pay the bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. Comments from township board members? Mr. Clements?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Mr. Steiner, I want to apologize on your motion. I was in thought as to some of the other comments, so I do apologize for leaving you in that situation. I feel like it would be wrong not to admit that. Circling back to the subject of the night, I will be very candid. I was the generation that I remember my first day in law enforcement, marijuana was illegal, and I remember issuing civil citations, and I remember tell people to have a good night. So I've seen that transition happen. I can tell you that personally I have some very strong objections with this concept that I have to reconcile. And I think to say anything other than that is not intellectually honest, and I ran saying I would be honest, so I feel like I need to do that. I'm not in favor of a survey. I think that we were having a discussion earlier tonight that there's a fine line when you're elected between doing what you want and representing what you feel like your voters want. And you're absolutely right. Some people came to the podium tonight and they said you elected us. And in fact, you did. There's 7 of us that you elected. But I think every single one of us has sat in front of the TV, or we've heard a politician at some point and thought, well, why in the world do you get to do or say whatever you want to do and you're not listening to your voters? And so I think to remove one and to say that sometimes I can do whatever I want and other times I have to solely listen to the public, it doesn't work that way. There has to be a balance. And sometimes that balance isn't fun. And I can tell you this discussion and this subject matter is going to be one of those not fun. There's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. And my position is this, as I've thought about it in reading the packet and in the weeks and some of the emails that I've received, by opting in, we create a marker in time. And that marker can be very difficult in government to undo. We bear liability on both sides of the coin the moment we opt in. By opting out, we provide ourselves the option down the road. We're not tying our hands. So I can't tell you tonight how I feel and which way I'm going to vote. But I can tell you that's the way I see the argument. And more than anything, I wanted to make an apology to Mr. Steiner and also at least be on record in saying that I'm not supportive of a survey. I think there's other areas this township needs to use that money. And I think over the next several weeks, month, or time frame, we will definitely get feedback as to how our residents are feeling. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
For your comments. Mr. Fredericks?
We've heard tonight from both sides of this issue vis-a-vis medical marijuana. This is not recreational marijuana. If this was recreational marijuana, I would be the first one to pass or offer a resolution to forget it. This is medical marijuana, which the people in this state voted 60% to approve the use of medical marijuana in the state. What is before us is the second pile of regulations that, of course, the state, seeing how this goes, said, wait a minute, we have to have some control over this. We have to have some regulations in place, and we have to license it. We had a gentleman earlier just talk about the fact that, well, it's tax this and it's tax that and tax something else. I am not a firm believer in using the money from taxes on medical people or people who are sick just to build a park. In other words, if the whole result is, well, we're going to get a lot of tax money and therefore we can go build a park and we're building this on the backs of people who are ill. Two things. One, if we were to vote in, I have a real problem as a lawyer. And the reason I have a problem as a lawyer, I have to say I can't vote for that because I will not put this township in a situation where it is in violation of federal law. As a lawyer, I can't do that, will not do that. I am not anxious to see us move into approving recreational marijuana. I won't do that either because I think Mr. Tisdale has already told us on numerous occasions what he's seen in his operation and his work as a Michigan State policeman. But this is a medical marijuana issue. It is not recreational. And so I am more than willing to listen to both sides of the story so that I can make an informed business decision on behalf of the township. Do I like this position? Not particularly, but that's what you get elected to do. You get elected to make decisions on issues like this. And I don't have a problem making it because I was unelected before I got here. I can be unelected afterwards. I've retired 4 times, I can retire again. So the whole issue is, what do we do with medical marijuana? And do we opt out? I think Mr. Clements has said we can opt out, and later, if something comes along, we can opt back in. That's a decision the board can make, and I want to be able to make sure I have sufficient information to make a reasonable business decision, because that's where I spent 34 years of my life. Thank you.
Mr. Steiner?
First off, I apologize. I know I came across a little brash to you guys, but it was a little disheartening because we could have just changed that real quick. I appreciate the comments of people in the room tonight that came up from the public. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the young lady's name who's the advocate for cannabis. You said you sent an email twice to the board. I don't recall seeing anything in my emails. We do have a lot of stuff that gets pulled off by spam automatically. If you want to stop by and give people your information, we can add, a safe email to the list if you want to send us some information. I don't have a problem with, as the gentleman stated here, someone that's an epileptic, that marijuana can help them medically. There's other types of issues that help people medically by being able to use marijuana. Right now at this time, though, I don't hear an outcry that there's no medical marijuana available to the patients that need this to be able to live and have a better life because of their symptoms. As you heard me say before, again, I'm not an attorney like Mr. Frederick, but we do have federal laws that say it is illegal, and I just can't agree with that. I know it's personal opinion, but I can't disagree to something that's a federal law. And again, put our law enforcement in the middle of trying to decide whose law they enforce. Do I try to enforce a local law, or do I try to enforce what the federal law says? That's pretty tough on them, too. It's not fair. Mr. Frederick made a good point, too, about if we collected money and tax dollars, could we build a park, or could we, build whatever? And if you think about it, you said, okay, we could build a park with this money, but you know what? If what we really want to do is serve that patient, the hell with the park money. You know what that money should go for? Reducing the drug costs for the people that need those drugs. Okay? I can't see, taking, a swath of $50,000, $100,000 in tax money, throw it at a park, throw it at this, throw it at that. When you could say, you know what? For 1,000 patients, we can save them $100 a month. Hey, that's in my court. That's really the savings to the people that really need it. Now, granted, a park might serve the whole community, but you know what? As a community, who are we supposed to serve? We're supposed to serve our fellow man, whether we're an elected official or whether we are just a normal citizen. Every one of us, before we sat up here, we're just normal citizens. But guess what? We are still normal citizens. Just because we sit here doesn't make us any better or less than anybody else. And I know this is going to be a really tough issue down the road. I'm willing to listen to and receive information on the subject. But right now I have a difficult time based on some of the laws that are out there and some of the things that are done inappropriately. We have inappropriate use of drugs today, whether it's marijuana. Look at the opioids, Look how much of that. Look at the doctors prescribing opioids because people, oh, I got another pain. Yep, let me give you another 90 days. Oh, I lost my prescription. Oh, well, we'll pass that. I saw, and granted it's television, but I saw an episode of one of these cop shows. I don't remember which one, but they had gone in. They decided to go after the doctor. They found that the doctor was continuing to write these prescriptions. And believe me, I'm not saying anything against doctors by far, but it does happen. Have you ever seen an article in the paper about a doctor that did something wrong, sold too many drugs, wrote too many prescriptions, wrote illegal prescriptions, did other things that are not quite legal? Yeah, it happens. Unfortunately, there are those people in our society that aren't there for the good of man. They're there for themselves. So we have to look at all those things. So I'll get off my little soapbox. I know we've got other board members that have some things to say tonight. Again, I'm not opposed to listening to information, but at this time, I can't say anything more than I still say we opt out, and that's my personal opinion, unless somebody can prove otherwise that would make me change my opinion.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Tinneberry?
Thank you. Well, I really didn't have anything until we had the discussion on marijuana, but for Ms. Stevens' information, we probably killed several trees with this over 100 pages of information and documentation. I'm very thankful to our supervisor.
Hey.
Well, or whoever, Trudy or Paul, whoever put together the document, because we had lots and lots of information to read and digest and research.
We put it together.
Okay, well, okay. Sorry, Trudy, he's taking all the
Sorry,
credit.
Trudy.
But and I totally agree with you about we're elected and paid, we're hired by the taxpayers to make decisions. Hard decisions, easy decisions. Some of them tonight didn't take any discussion, but some of them are hard decisions, and I totally agree with you. We don't need to take a survey before every decision. I take surveys every week with my neighbors, the people I talk to in the grocery store. People are always coming up to me and giving me their opinions, so I kind of have a feeling when I come to each meeting. My husband gets information, feeds it to me. If you talk to your neighbors and you talk to the citizens of the township, you're basically doing a survey. So I'm totally against surveys as well. And for the cannabis advocate that lives on Keitha, I was at that meeting. I sat across the table during dinner and talked with you.
Hey, well, this is board comments, thank you.
I work at IDA, but I'm also a trustee on the Bedford Township Board. And I did speak with you, I talked with you, I got the packet, I heard the woman's testimony about how she came from illness to health. So, and we do talk to other townships and people from other townships, so it's not like we came here ignorant or uninformed or had not done our research. And I think we're proceeding on the right path. We're taking time to make our decisions. So I'm proud of this board for not making a decision tonight and not being, having to feel like the discussion had to end in a decision. So thank you all.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Hirschberger?
I'm not even going to talk about the issue. I'm just going to go straight to what we have. The township will be closed on Monday, January 15th to observe Martin Luther King Day. And the only other thing I want is to let his friends know, and the board know, my father's turning 89. I know he has a lot of friends out there that meet him at all the different restaurants so that they know in a couple days his birthday. So happy birthday, Dad.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Francis?
Well, we've spent a lot of time shoveling smoke tonight, haven't we? This is, to me, it's a real issue. The folks that have spoken supporting opting in tonight, I'll phrase it as that, they make you believe that we're trying to outlaw medical marijuana. We're not trying to do that at all. Rick mentioned, is there an overwhelming need for medical marijuana in Bedford Township that's not being filled? If there is, then it makes some sense. Well, maybe we ought to allow that to be worked on by having a commercial entity formed that will provide that. But I just don't think that that's the reason those businesses are going into business for medical marijuana use. They're after step 2, which will probably be on our ballot a year from now, which would be recreational use of marijuana. That's where the money is. To me, that's where maybe the greatest need for the product is. If someone can show me that someone mentioned there's 38,000 medical marijuana card holders in the state, and there's 39,000 caregivers that provide to those folks. Well, are there more than 238,000 that need it? If there are, then maybe we ought to address that issue, because I'm all in support of providing those folks what they need medically. I don't have a condition that would help, but I'm sure some do. And from what I've read, medical marijuana does help them, and that's good. They need that help. That's not the issue I'm concerned about. It's the next step, the recreational marijuana. And I kind of resent being painted with the same brush that says we're against medical marijuana use. We're not against that. None of us have said that. In fact, I think all of us may have said just the opposite. We want to help those folks.
That's all I got. Thank you for your comments. Well, I have done my homework. I've spent a lot of time putting this packet together with my deputy, and Mr. Fredericks has spent an enormous amount of time investigating and pulling information together for the last months. Our ordinance has been working on different issues with this. I could talk for an hour on some of the information I've gotten. You guys have said a lot. I'm glad it's at this point to where it's at a board meeting, so everybody in the audience and everybody at home can realize it's not just me that gets to make this decision. It's a board of 7. And I've been called out on Facebook, emails, and blasted because it's like, people feel like it's just my decision. It's 7 people. You elect 7 people, not one. So I'm glad it's here. That way you can hear from everybody and realize it's not one decision. You know, that's part of it that makes me nervous with this whole industry and where we're moving with it. Some of the messages I've received, and some of the emails, and some of the Facebook posts. These people are going to be running big business in our township. So it makes me nervous a little bit. So maybe if we had some decent emails and decent conversations, it might not be, you know, some of the things that are being said up here. It might be different dealing with, some individuals that run a good business. But like I said, I'll save my comments for March. This board has 2 months till, we make a decision. I'll be doing more homework. I'll be talking to Erie and LaSalle and some of these other townships that have opted out and some that have opted in. And I'll come back with a lot of information. I won't be talking to individuals with personal interest in it. I know your opinions. I've talked to you. I will be talking to the professionals that deal with this stuff from the state levels and some of the other elected officials. It's just how I feel about it. I appreciate every board member on this board because we are elected to make hard decisions. I've done it this will be my 9th year as an elected official, and I've made a lot of hard decisions. And I agree, not every decision we make needs to go to the public. Some get put on the ballot, some don't. The state has put it in our lap to make a decision. And I believe we are doing our best to represent Bedford. No individual, no personal interest, and nobody that's out to gain a boatload of money, because I've heard that in my meetings too. We're out for the citizens of Bedford, and we're taking our time to do our best and get the information together, and that's what we're doing. We're not making a quick decision, because a lot of these messages I've received, it's wanting to be shoved down my throat. And I would like to say that I appreciate everybody on this board for taking our time and not rushing through this and putting Bedford in a bad position. So I appreciate that. But and the snow plowing, I want to let you know that I'm continuing to work on a resolution with snow plowing in the subdivisions. I have a couple of different ideas of hiring some seasonal in our maintenance department and utilizing some of our plows and possibly getting one of the trucks from the fire department that they no longer need. And we have a company called ITC that we've engaged with that they'll be putting singular poles throughout the township. I'm sure you guys have heard of them. The double poles that go through some area, the wood poles that go all the way to the Lake Erie. They'll be replacing them with single poles. And they have money set aside for Bedford Township. So we're going to be utilizing that. We'll be meeting with them in a week or so to talk about how much money they're setting aside for us. Just so it'd be nice if we could get possibly a couple of plows, but I'll shoot a message out to the board, and obviously it'll come before the board before we take any type of monetary gift. So that is all I've got to say. Any more discussion from any board members? Nope. We stand adjourned.